The Young and the Restless spoilers, full episodes Monday, March 9th, 2026. Jack was facing death, but he wasn't afraid of it and looked at it with a calm gaze. His family, however, was different. Everything terrified us. Diane cried constantly, and she felt so exhausted. She vowed to kill Victor, to kill anyone who dared to harm Jack. What had Patty done? Why was she here? That was Diane's question. Patty was unpredictable, often consumed by obsession and instability, but she also had a habit of appearing near the edge of secrets. Diane suspected that Patty might know something about Jack's disappearance, perhaps something she had overheard or witnessed. The demand for money didn't seem like greed, but rather leverage, a sign that Patty believed she possessed information valuable enough to sell. Diane understood the risk of trusting her, but time was running out. If Patty truly held the slightest clue, Diane was prepared to face the uncertainty and uncover the truth before paying any price. Sienna presented herself as loyal, but she was a deceiver, and one should be wary. Sienna said she wanted to live happily with Noah and leave Genoa, but she didn't want to follow Matt's pursuit. She wanted him dead. Sienna said she had some clues she wanted to give to Nick, and she wanted to help Nick kill Matt. To Nick, the statement sounded dangerously impulsive. Matt Clark wasn't someone to be confronted without consequences, and anyone who acted against him without careful strategy risked becoming the next victim of the invisible network surrounding him. Sharon sensed something else in Sienna's determination. Gratitude had transformed into a silent despair, the mood of someone who had witnessed enough darkness to believe that waiting for others to act was no longer an option. Both Nick and Sharon realized that Sienna might know more about Matt's activities than she had revealed, and her decision to act alone threatened to ignite a much larger conflict than she understood. Victor only wanted to attack Jack and reclaim what belonged to him, but unfortunately, things become more complicated than they could possibly be. Billy threatened Victor and the Newman family, saying he would punish everyone, a threat that angered Nick, Matt, and Nikki, who had nothing to do with it. Obvious action seems all too obvious, as if the very demand was designed to distract them. Billy wondered if they were pursuing a story that someone else wanted them to believe. Perhaps Victor was involved, but perhaps the real mastermind behind Jack's disappearance was lurking behind the rivalry between the two powerful families. Seeing Patty was both shocking and unsettling for Jack. Her unpredictable nature had always been hard to believe, and finding her in the middle of the ocean raised more questions than answers. Jack's first instinct was to try to elicit some remaining reason or compassion from her. He told her that if she helped him get off the boat, she might be doing the right thing this time. But Patty didn't respond with sympathy. Instead, she observed him with the calm curiosity of someone who believed she held all the power in the situation. Her next words showed she had no intention of helping Jack without something in return. That request caught him by surprise. Jack had anticipated resistance, but Patty's tone held a strange mix of playful teasing and manipulation. When he asked what she wanted in return, she responded with something so unexpected it left him momentarily speechless. She wanted a kiss. The request sounded trivial given their life or death situation, but Jack immediately understood it wasn't just about a kiss. Patty was always driven by emotion, and this moment showed she was reveling in the psychological control she held over him. She knew he was desperate. She knew he would consider doing almost anything if it meant escaping the boat and returning home. Jack realized he was in the midst of a dangerous negotiation, where reason and emotion intertwined. Every instinct told him Patty might not keep her promise, even if he agreed to her request. But refusing would mean he would be stranded in the middle of the ocean with no hope of being rescued. The battle surrounding the disappearance of Jack Abbott continued to escalate, pushing long-standing rivalries in Genoa City toward a boiling point. Determined not to surrender to intimidation, Billy Abbott, Diane Jenkins Abbott, and Kyle Abbott confronted Victor Newman with the hope that pressure might force him to reveal the truth about Jack's fate. Their strategy was simple on the surface challenge. Victor openly threatened consequences and make it clear that the Abbott family would not quietly surrender Chancellor in exchange for Jack's freedom. Yet anyone who had watched Victor operate over the years understood that intimidation was rarely an effective weapon against him. Victor did not retreat when threatened. He expanded the battlefield. The confrontation unfolded exactly as expected. Billy tried to corner Victor with accusations and warnings, Diane attempted to expose the moral ugliness of his tactics, and Kyle reinforced the idea that Victor's actions would eventually turn even his closest allies against him. Victor's response was cold, unwavering, and unmistakably arrogant. Instead of retreating, he answered with a threat of his own, reminding them that he had spent a lifetime defeating opponents who believed they could outmaneuver him. To Victor, their anger was not frightening. It was proof that his strategy was working. Watching the exchange unfold was Adam Newman, who chose a very different approach. Rather than escalating the confrontation, Adam attempted to reason with his father. He appealed to Victor's sense of long-term strategy, suggesting that pushing the Abbott family to the edge could create consequences that even Victor might not fully control. Adam understood that Victor often justified his most ruthless decisions as necessary sacrifices made for the sake of protecting the Newman legacy. If logic had any chance of reaching him, it would have to come through that lens. Yet even Adam's calm reasoning seemed to bounce harmlessly off Victor's confidence. Victor listened, but the expression on his face revealed that he was not reconsidering his position. To him, the situation was still perfectly under control. This was not the first time Victor had used Jack as a pawn in his endless war with the Abbott family. In the past, when Victor's manipulations had crossed particularly cruel lines, Nikki Newman had walked away from him in disgust. One memory still lingered vividly in the minds of those who knew the story. Nikki had once left Victor after realizing that he had used Jack as collateral in one of his schemes. Victor's reaction had not been quiet reflection, but explosive rage. When Nikki returned, hours later, hoping perhaps that the storm had passed, Victor reminded her of something he had repeated throughout his life. He had grown up as a poor orphan with nothing, and everything he had built, every ruthless move, every calculated manipulation, had been done for the sake of his family. In Victor's mind, those words justified everything. He did not see cruelty, he saw sacrifice. He did not see manipulation, he saw protection. And because he believed so deeply in that narrative, threats, logic, or emotional appeals rarely reached him. That realization raised a troubling question for anyone trying to stop him now. If Victor could not be moved by threats, could not be persuaded by reason, and could even withstand the possibility of losing the affection of the people he claimed to love, then what weapon remained? What could possibly disrupt the iron? Certainty that powered his decisions. The answer might lie in something Victor despised more than defeat itself. Victor Newman could endure hatred. He could endure rebellion. What he could not tolerate was being diminished. Victor had built his entire identity around the idea that he was the most formidable man in any room, the most dangerous strategist, the most powerful force in Genoa City. Every conflict he entered reinforced that mythology. But the one reaction capable of undermining that image was not fear or anger. It was ridicule. Laughter, simple and unrestrained, had the power to cut through Victor's authority in a way threats never could. Victor expected opponents to rage against him, to shout, to plead, to threaten. Those reactions confirmed his dominance because they acknowledged his power. But laughter suggested something entirely different. Laughter implied that his grand manipulations were not terrifying, but absurd. It stripped away the aura of menace that Victor relied upon to control situations. If the people around him stopped treating his schemes as unstoppable and instead treated them as ridiculous, the foundation of his intimidation would begin to crack. The idea might sound almost childish on the surface, but psychologically, it struck at the core of Victor's identity. Imagine a moment when Victor issued one of his thunderous orders expecting the usual silence or reluctant obedience. Instead of fear, he would hear chuckles. Instead of tense respect, he would see amused smiles spreading across the faces of his own family. Nikki, Adam, and the others might exchange glances before breaking into laughter, not cruel laughter, but the kind that says a man's threats have become embarrassing rather than frightening. At first, Victor would likely respond with fury, interpreting the reaction as disrespect. Yet the more they laughed, the more the dynamic would shift. Rage feeds on confrontation, but ridicule starves it. If his family refused to treat his schemes as terrifying acts of genius, and instead treated them as the exaggerated theatrics of a man desperate to prove his own importance, Victor would face a form of resistance he had never truly mastered. The irony of the situation was almost poetic. For years, Victor had dominated Genoa City through fear, through the belief that opposing him meant inviting destruction. But power built on fear collapses when people stop believing in it. Billy, Diane, and Kyle had tried threats and logic tools that Victor knew how to counter easily. Adam had tried reason appealing to strategy and legacy. None of it truly shook Victor's certainty. Yet laughter, the one response Victor could neither control nor command, might be the only weapon capable of unraveling his latest scheme. If the people around him refused to treat his manipulations as terrifying acts of power, and instead responded with amused disbelief, Victor might finally face something he had spent his entire life, trying to avoid the possibility that the greatest weapon. His reputation as the most dangerous man, and thus, Genoa City was nothing more than a story people had chosen to believe. And once people stop believing in a legend, even a man like Victor Newman can find himself standing alone, shouting orders into a room that no longer takes him seriously.